Welcome to episode 305 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I chat with Lincoln City FC CEO Liam Scully about the pressures of running an English football club when you have big clubs as neighbours.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who's waiting for Clubhouse to release an Android version, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. I should have used that intro a little bit earlier because Clubhouse is now available on Android, and I am on Clubhouse at Sean Callanan, pretty much as I am with every single place on the internet. Got to say, a little bit underwhelmed with Clubhouse and the whole live social audio piece. I think it has a place. I don't think it's for me. I think on-demand audio, aka podcasting, is the best place for audio. But I do think it has a little place. But yeah, it's very much a land grab in the world of social audio with Clubhouse, Green Room, Twitter Spaces and the like. That's it. I'm getting right into the nuts and bolts of things, but haven't even introduced myself. I'm Sean Callanan. I'm the host. You can find me on Clubhouse or on all platforms at Sean Callanan or at Sports Geek. You can find this podcast at sportsgeekhq.com, and you can also find it on podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. If there's a way that you can leave a review, I'd really appreciate it. I've got over 100 ratings on iTunes, or Apple Podcasts as it's now known. A lot of other things don't allow reviews, and they make it very difficult for the people who have gone to the effort of making a review. I really do appreciate it. It's great to be back podcasting. Thank you very much for the messages on the recent couple of episodes. Scott O'Neill and Fiona Green, and thank you to Fiona, who also teed up this interview with Liam Scully. I think other than reviews, I think the best way and the best advice I can give is please share the episode that you've recently listened to. It might be this one. Well, if you're listening to this sentence, it would be this one. Like, I'm now going to get myself in a loop and get all twisted. But if you could share it on LinkedIn, I'd really appreciate it. Please tag me, tag the guests, share some insights. LinkedIn for me is a really powerful network, and I really appreciate it if you would share it on your LinkedIn. Before I get into this episode and this CEO series chat with Liam Scully, just a bit of an update on what I've been working on a few different projects, building out a new website for a sports advisory business, helping athletes. So going through the digital offer and what they're trying to offer, and then crafting that from a website and a customer onboarding point of view and communication, and setting up their marketing strategy, developing a social media advertising playbook for a client that wants to help their marketing team maximize what they're doing on Facebook ads. So effectively setting up some training materials so their staff can continually build out successful campaigns. And then the other one is we're launching a gaming strategy with a charity organisation to help them enter the world of video games. I'm doing that with Chris Derrick at Play Media. So check out We Are Play Media. That's how that is our business that we're helping businesses get into the world of gaming across video games and esports. So if you're looking to enter the world of gaming, please check out weareplaymedia.com. And talking about esports, a quick update from Gravitas. Split 2 of the LCO has kicked off a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, really pleased in the last sort of having a few announcements kicking off. We announced a partnership with Scratch. Scratch is a dog food business. You're like, hang on, dog food business, esports, what's going on? What are you doing? They are our official pet partner. It is not, I guess, a standard esports partnership. We don't expect to be seeing dogs playing games or watching esports, but what we have found in looking at the data is a lot of people who play video games and watch esports, guess what? They have pets, they have dogs, they love their dogs. So I'm a good mate with the co-founder of Scratch, Mike Halligan, and I pitched him a crazy idea during quarantine. I'm like, how about we create a jersey that is covered with fans' photos of their dogs? And I need a dog food partner to do that. So Mike is happy enough to make the leap and have a bit of fun. They love getting dogs involved in anything that they love. And so if you've got a dog, please send in your photos. I'd love to profile your dog on the Gravitas Scratch Dog jersey. Check it out, gravitas.gg is the website. And then not only are we announcing that we've got a pet partner with Scratch, we're also launching our own beer. So the Gravitas Glory Beer campaign is live. We're partnering with the guys at Urban Alley Brewery down in Docklands in Victoria. And they are currently brewing the beer that will be the Gravitas Glory Beer. So doing it via possible, crowdfunding it. If you want to support Gravitas or support me in any way, I'd love you to jump on that link, gravitas.gg/beer. And yeah, buy a 4-pack, buy a case, and come down to the launch party. Unfortunately, to my international listeners, I cannot send cans of beer internationally. I will try to figure out ways around that, but you can support it via buying merch or a hoodie or something like that. But yeah, please check it out. I'm really excited to see the Gravitas logo and branding on a can of beer and be able to toast hopefully a few Gravitas victories in the meantime. So yeah, please check it out. Before I get into my chat with Liam Scully, thank you very much to those who are Patreon subscribers. You can be a Patreon subscriber by going to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. It helps pay for the podcasting bills, hosting, editing, all the things in between. Really do appreciate it. Recent sign-ups, Josh Treadwell, Karen Lunn, Paul Rogash, Elliot Johnson, thank you very much for signing up. I really do appreciate it. And it's one of the reasons I keep doing it. So this is my chat with Liam Scully. He's the CEO of Lincoln City FC. Please enjoy. Very happy to connect and welcome the CEO of Lincoln City FC, Liam Scully. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Well, as I always do when I start an interview, I want to find out, how did you get your start in the sports business?
Yeah, I was like most young boys in the UK. I wanted to be a professional footballer. I got to the age just pre-scholarship, so just before you get your youth contracts, and unfortunately I was released. And thankfully at that time I had enough about me to realise that there are other opportunities in the sports industry. So I took an apprenticeship in sports coaching. And long story from there, but after kind of 19 years of working in the industry, various roles from being an apprentice sports coach to being a chief operating officer. 4 years ago, I was very fortunate to be asked to join Lincoln City Football Club as their chief executive, and I've been here ever since.
So that a lot of people push through their business career really quickly, and I like winding back because you started with an apprenticeship at the PFA. And so, going from, and a lot of people who are sports graduates or getting into the business set that high bar of this is where I want to be. You talked about some of those different roles. What were some of those different roles, and what were some of those key, stepping stones from one role to a new team or a different role that were really vital to help you to get to a CEO space?
Yeah, so the majority of my time I spent in the UK, it's called CCOs, so Club Community Organisations. So I spent 16 years within that space. And the truth of the matter, Sean, is the CCO I was working at Doncaster Rovers, Club Doncaster, we hit financial trouble. The chief exec left. I'd only recently been promoted to deputy chief exec, and I think, and I'm not embarrassed to say this, but I was probably the cheap option. And equally, knowing the financial trouble the organisation was in, it just couldn't afford to kind of load more costs. And, thankfully, I suppose that was my opportunity, because myself and the team around us at that time, we worked really hard, kind of completely reorientated the business, reorganised the charity, and thankfully we survived, saved a great number of jobs. And then was able to build and go from there. And I think what that allowed me to do is it allowed me to cut my teeth in a bit of a distress situation. At that time, you're not looking for perfection, you're not fine-tuning, you're kind of making wholesale changes. And whilst it was an extremely stressful time and it wasn't enjoyable, what it did do is it just gave me a good grounding and a good backing. So at that point, I was 26. I'm 36 now, and I've got 10 years chief exec experience. But mainly because my first rung on the ladder was in a distress situation. So did that for 4 or 5 years. I then moved over to the group of companies that operated the Club Doncaster structure. So I was Group Chief Operating Officer 4 years after that. And then another 4-year stint so far at Lincoln City. So it was probably a slow and steady climb for the first 8 years or so, and then quite a rapid ascent through circumstances, as well as hopefully a bit of hard work and a bit of know-how.
But the good thing there, Liam, is like a lot of people joke early with a smaller club and small startups that CEO means Chief Everything Officer. Like there's a bit of, you get to do all the different roles. So when you actually have the luxury, and it is a luxury in some instances, of actually having people in the roles, you've got some empathy and understanding of what those roles are. Do you think, like working in that small club in distress situations, now you're at Lincoln City, gives you a better overview and better understanding of the tasks and the roles that people who are working for the club now, because you've actually walked in their shoes a little bit?
Yeah, well, one of the phrases I do say quite a lot and I'm proud of is, have walked a mile in quite a few shoes. I think what's been quite interesting for me over my career is, as that's developed and as you work with professionals and specialists, it's that knowing when to create a bit of distance and knowing when to step in. So, I would never like to think that I can out-finance the finance director at Lincoln City or out-commercial the commercial director at Lincoln City. But back in those days when I was the chief financial officer and the chief commercial officer and everything that you said there, it was a great experience. So I think you go through a journey, and what I'd like to think is that, we empower people and we give them the space that they need to thrive, but I'm there to support. So it's a real fine balance. But one thing I would like to think, I can be articulate and I can understand their world, so at least to sympathise with the challenges that they have, which I think a great quality any boss or any leader needs to show, is just an empathy and an understanding to the team's environment and their particular challenges.
So as you said, you've been at Lincoln City since August 2017. For the listeners who don't know about Lincoln City, don't know about its history, don't know where it's positioned, do you want to give us a little bit of both a description of Lincoln City overall and some of its vast and long history, but then also what it was like when you when you stepped in the role and arrived in 2017?
Yeah, so Lincoln City is a football club that's over 125 years old. It's had a proud history at various levels, up and down the football pyramid. At one time, we held the award for being the most relegated team in the English Football League. But a number of years ago, the club was relegated out of the English Football League, which for your listeners that don't know, it is like dropping off the cliff in the English pyramid. The funding, shrinks significantly. It is a very, very different landscape. So the club operated for 7 years outside of the EFL. And then it was promoted back into the EFL the summer before I joined. So part of me joining was the fact that the board and the owners of the club realised that the club would need a CEO coming back into the EFL. They wanted somebody with a bit of experience. And ever since then, it's been a real enjoyable journey, bringing the football club off the field and on the field, up to speed. We're very fortunate to have won, 3 major trophies in 3 years. The club had never been to Wembley in its whole history, 120 plus years, and then we've been twice in the last 4 years. So very, very proud of that. And I'd like to think that people from the outside looking in that know the English football pyramid see us as a club very much on the rise, on the up, trying to do things the right way. And I know that's quite a bold and equally quite vast statement, but we like to conduct our business and all our interactions in a certain way, and equally bring joy and happiness to the fans of Lincoln City, who've, throughout their time supporting the club, have had to put up with a fair amount of difficult times.
So how do you balance, when you're talking about the pyramid structure and the push to win and continue to get promoted, with trying to put some stability around the business of Lincoln City and connections with fans and building something that's sustainable? How's that balance been? Because, you go on Twitter or you talk to the fans in the stands, and They just want to see results. They want to see the continued, wins and promotion. How do you balance that?
Yeah, look, and it's clearly very difficult. 66% of the fans that regularly come to Lincoln City are relatively new, and that's an interesting dynamic. You've got the 33% that have been here, throughout the good, the bad, and the ugly. They have their certain views and their experiences, and naturally with a newer and a more recently engaged fan base, their experiences, their understanding are probably slightly different. So we've got to be alive to that nuance. We've got to be aware. I think the thing that sits, and apologies, this sounds quite corny, but it's true and it's genuine, is the thing that sits at the heart of the football club. Every decision we make is a decision to make the fans proud. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to go and splash the cash and just try and buy our way out of the leagues. That doesn't mean that we're going to be, everything that we do at a granular level means, well, tickets are free because that makes you proud. It's not about that. It's about having a real balance and having a real understanding that the ecosystem that makes the club successful requires commerciality, it requires sponsorship, it requires owner investment, and it requires the fans. So we try and be alive to all those challenges. Sometimes those things can contradict each other, so what's ideal and optimum for one isn't ideal and optimum for the other. So it's about finding balance, and we just try to transact in a way that we're open, we're transparent. I'd argue and I'd suggest we sometimes over communicate, but we would rather over communicate and share our decision making process, so even if the fans don't agree with us, they can at least understand the process that we went through. So they might not respect the outcome, but they hopefully respect the input and the diligence that goes into making such calls, whatever they may be. So
you're a couple of years in the CEO role at Lincoln City, and having some success on field and starting to build and starting to sort of get some real foundation to those plans. And then we have the year that is 2020. What was that like? I mean, all of everyone listening and the whole sports industry and a whole bunch of different industries have been affected by COVID and the restrictions around. What was it? How did it affect the AFL and Lincoln City in particular?
Well, absolutely huge. So just look at it from the simple closure of stadiums. Within the EFL, the lion's share, certainly League One and League Two level where we were playing, the lion's share of income comes through fans coming through the gates. Gate receipts are still, the primary single biggest revenue source. What we were very fortunate is the EFL, through the central deal, we had iFollow, which is the streaming service, the over-the-top service. So that was plugged in. It certainly wasn't ready to be delivered on the scale that it required to be, and there was a few teething problems. But effectively, from a pure commercial point of view, and happy to share some numbers, we went from achieving something around £12 a seat, a bum on seat, times 9,000 people on average. All of a sudden, that was £8 because that was the price of the streaming pass. But on average, you were looking at 3.5 people per household that were watching that stream. So you've gone from a £12 bum on seat right down to a £2, £3, net receipt from viewers. So instantly you'll see there, Sean, is the revenue coming into the club was cut by 2/3. The way we approached the pandemic, I thought,
was there any? I mean, when it really hit hard, we saw some of the leagues completely stop and have long breaks. What was the discussions? It's a combination of leagues and clubs. Was there a discussion to say, well, we shouldn't play, or let's so the decision go on? How much were you as a club and a part of that with the EFL?
Yeah, so I think what was interesting. So what actually the end result was the Championship. So the league below the Premier League, they played on. They completed Leagues 1 and League 2. We halted play and we finished using a flat points per game scenario. Now League 2 came to their decision pretty quickly in terms of curtailing the league. I think one thing people will know, so again, respectful to not everybody will know the dynamic of League One, but in League One, we've got clubs the size of Sunderland, so we all know Sunderland Till I Die, the Netflix documentary. We've got clubs, that size, Lincoln City that probably sit in the middle. We have a 10,000 seat stadium, 9,000 fans every week, but we're certainly not 40, 50,000 Sunderland. And equally, with all due respect, you've had teams such as Rochdale or AFC Wimbledon that are smaller teams. So everything from an average of 2,000 to 40,000 within our league, and quite a scheduled grind. So the real challenge that we had is the commercial businesses, the aspirations of the clubs. Forget the sporting aspect. Those people that were voting and looking for the outcome, there was just a plethora of what success looks like. And for us, when we approached the pandemic, we said there's 3 phases: survival, revival, and hopefully thrive. But until you start, you don't earn the right to get to revival until you first survived. And it was evident from those league meetings where it was difficult. There was a few arguments. You had clubs going, "My God, I just want to survive," to other clubs saying, "Well, our job is to get out of this league as quick as we can because we're a Premier League club. We have no right to be in the League One." And and then of course you've got those that work out points per game and know exactly whether it's going to work in their favour, whether it's not. So League One, we were definitely a pain in the backside to the EFL because it was up to the clubs to vote, and there was difference of opinions for a long period of time. But eventually we got to the decision that we would curtail. We'd finish on points per game. That gave Lincoln City a 16th place finish. That was our first year back in League One, our highest league place finish for over 30 years. So that for us was on field was success still. But obviously our focus and our attention very much went to the survival of the football club. We desperately didn't want to be the temporary custodians of Lincoln City Football Club that saw the club go out of existence. 120 plus years of history, we could not let it go out of business, and that was where our focus was right from the minute we locked to the end of the sporting season. 2019-20, it was about what do we need to do to protect this football club.
And so you discussed there, iFollow and the acceleration of getting streaming products, but it doesn't result in the same number. Then you're able to at least get back to having fans returning, and then you had limited capacity, and the comms, and like you said, being overly open and talking to the fans, saying this is how many tickets we've got, this is who's going to get them. What was like? Hopefully you're getting into that revived phase of getting fans back, but the lucky notion of actually being able to have fans and then delivering those fans and getting them to games, what was that process like to try to get those fans back after a long wait?
I think first and foremost, the Lincoln City fans, because we operate at about 90% plus of capacity every week in, week out prior to the pandemic, the Lincoln City fans are well versed in kind of the tactics required to obtain tickets, the nuance of what they need to do to see games. So one of the proudest things we have of Lincoln City, and through data we know this, but nearly 25% of the fans travel from more than an hour and a half away. Travel from more than 50 miles, which obviously from your part of the world, Sean, or in the US, that's not a big deal. In the UK, you've probably driven past 20 football clubs in such way. So Lincolnshire people are exiles. They do tend to graduate from the city and move away, and for whatever reason. So what we do have is we knew we had a highly engaged fan base. We knew we had fans that were dedicated, they were loyal. And one of the things we did is we shared what the story of the pandemic was. And the proudest initiative I think that we had was we didn't know how to say thank you to the fans who were writing to us saying, look, I bought my season ticket for next year, or you owe me £100+, but I don't want it. I just want the football club to have that money. And what we didn't want to do is, whilst there was all this goodwill coming in, we just didn't want to say, oh, thanks, we'll have your money, we really, really appreciate it. Because while that would have been true, we wanted to give something tangible back to the fans. So what we decided to do is we offered the fans a share conversion. So Lincoln City now have 5,500 shareholders, which was the fans that went, I'd like to help. And we went, well, how about we convert to shares? So it's not a season ticket, but you can convert that to the value it shares at the same value that the principal investors buy in it, but they're your shares, and will also protect your value in the future. So it's not plan A, and it's, nobody's puts money into Lincoln City to make money and invest. But should things change in the future, and should the club ever be sold, and there is a buyout because of that, then the fans are also part of that as well, and we've protected their value. And I think I joke, but I've now got 5,500 bosses. Because but they're part of it, and it's really important that we was able to give them something as part of that. I suppose the challenge that had then is when we played Sunderland, we were allowed a limited capacity of 3,000. We have 6,000 season ticket holders. We have 9,000 people that wants to come to the game. Deciding that priority and how you deliver those tickets was a real difficult one, because out of that 6,000 or out of that 9,000, everybody had a legitimate claim as to why they should get a ticket. If it was based on emotion or based on things that they've done, every one of the 9,000 had a very, very good reason. And look, we ended up going with a ballot that was weighted based on season tickets and people that left money in the club. That was always going to be a difficult one, because people were getting a benefit that they never knew they were going to get. People who'd asked for refunds were missing out on something that they wouldn't have known when they did that. So again, I think this is where people might not agree with the outcome because of their own personal circumstances, but this is where I'd like to think we as a club went over and above, communicated our thought process, our decision making, and like I said, they might not agree with the decision we made, but at least they can see the path and the route that we took, and the fact that we didn't make that decision lightly. It wasn't a 10-minute meeting where we went, oh, how do we do this? We agonised and agonised over how to do this. And at least, hopefully, the fans could see that we respected that they had skin in the game somehow. And unfortunately, we were going to disappoint them, but we'd not just done it in a 10-minute meeting where all the suits locked themselves in a room and went, who cares? And I think empathy and sharing that is a really important story.
Definitely. I mean, you've spoken about it a few times in touching on the data and understanding who your fans are and what they're doing and where they're coming from. Actually introduced to you by a good friend of mine, Fiona Green, and you do feature in her latest book edition of the book Winning with Data. How is I guess putting together that data strategy and better understanding your fans, one, help get you where you are today, but also gave you some of those flexible options, like, oh, hang on, what if we bring these fans inside and offer them shares and make them part owners of the team? How is that data strategy and that work that you've done there, I guess, help shape what you're trying to do today?
Yeah, we use data right throughout the football club, from recruitment elements, from the elite and the players, right through to the decisions we make in commercial and marketing. And I think first and foremost, I think if you surround yourself with enough data input sources and you're collecting the right information and you're funneling it and you're filtering it in the right way, creating the right dashboards, there's not too many decisions that you actually need to make, because the obvious path is often there for you. Your job, or I often find my job, is to convert that data into real life, into feeling and emotion. And of course, you've got to use your gut at some points. That's not being completely switching off to that. But genuinely, I think we just use data, both from our ticketing data, from looking at things through our click-through rates, our open rates, who's doing what, how interested people are in certain things. We love an A/B test within Lincoln City for something that we're promoting, and I think at that point, that gives us the information that we need. We then sit ourselves in the room and then we analyze and we look at that. But I can't remember a time in the last 2 or 3 years since we started working with Fiona and a team at Winners and being more aggressive with our data strategy. I can't remember there's been a time where we've ever looked at a piece of information and gone, that's not the clear strategy to take. So a bit of grey hair and a bit of know-how in the football industry helps, and you want to marry that. We've got a young executive team, but we've equally got quite a few experienced folk that this isn't their first rodeo. So combining that with with the two, I think it just makes decision making a lot easier and far more justifiable as well. I think that's the other thing. We can talk to the fans around, we've looked at this and we know why. Can talk to the board around, we've looked into this decision, and you might think it's a margin call, but actually it's really not. There is a clear front runner, and I think that's the best resource and the best tool it gives you as a chief executive.
I mean, as a club, you've got access to so much data, but like you said before, like one of the core data sources that you would do a lot of analysis on is, ticketing. Like people turned up, they didn't turn up. Why didn't they turn up? How do we get them back? Have you found over the last, 12, 15 months, as you got less of that you're starting to look in other places and other sources to get some of that information that actually gives you a different perspective or a richer a view of your fans? Is there something that you've done from a data capture wise or from different platforms that you had to start leveraging because you didn't have that really valuable ticketing data?
Yeah, 100%. So for us, it was one of the most difficult challenges I think I've ever faced in business was setting the budget at the start of the year and trying to forecast iFollow revenue, because that way of watching and that way of consuming football had just never been used. And, so to give you a quick example, we looked at household data and we went, so what's the average households, that are our fan base? So, people come to games in twos and threes, but sometimes that's just friendship circles. So a group of four could be 4 different households. A group of 4 could be 1 household. So, first and foremost, it was using information such as that and then overlaying the data that was coming through from the online platform. Obviously, the one benefit that you had from an online service and people watching and streaming was the fact that you were constantly getting feedback of their activity. You were seeing how early they were watching the games. You were seeing what they were subscribing to. That ecosystem quite quickly went from having maybe 3 or 4 bits of data inputs to 55, 60. Our system all of a sudden became topped up. And the truth of the matter is we probably didn't understand how to use that at first. It was a bit like an avalanche. You got this drip effect, and all of a sudden, a bucket of water got dropped on you, and going, oh my gosh, right? How are we going to use this? And I think it was for us, it was about pivoting certain things that we were doing. And actually, one of the phrases we use quite a lot is not letting pride come before a fall. So there were certain things that we set out in the season, and I'd gone to the board and said, no, we need to do this. This is going to be brilliant. And after 3 or 4 games, we'd realised, we went, oh my gosh, this is failing. Just give it up. But sometimes you can want to, your ego gets in the way, and you believe your idea is so good that you want to keep going with it. And I think what data gave us was a really good way of going, just scrap that. We're resource light. You don't have the biggest teams. So let's put our resource where it's going to shift the needle. And that might be shifting the needle for fan experience. It might be shifting the needle for functionality. It might be shifting the needle for user experience. But that's what we ended up focusing our efforts on that. And one of the proudest things I think we did, we introduced a match day show quite early on, Match Day Live. Former Premier League presenter Sam Ashew, he headed that up. Because what we were finding is the fans were wanting to extend their match day. The match day ritual of getting out, going for a pint in the pub, and then getting on. They missed all that. So anecdotally, and then through the data that was coming through to us, we knew that the fans actually wanted an extended match day that wasn't just turn your browser on at 3 p.m. And then we extended the match day show, and we started to, through different types of content, we started to see what the fans wanted, and that grew our numbers significantly, because what we found then is people were watching the match day live show as part of their routine, and that became their new routine, and then plugging into the live stream, and that boosted numbers significantly. So I think, there was learning throughout. We were falling all the time, but we were failing fast. It was like, what can we do? If we're going to fail, let's do it quickly. And we did. And I'd like to think probably by the second quarter of the season, we'd found our stride. We'd started to understand, and the fans have been brilliant. Like I say this really respectfully, and I don't mean to generalise, but we have a proud long history of fans. We have a large number of 65, 75-year-old in age plus fans. And with all due respect, without generalising, that whole conversion to technology platform was daunting. Going out, people were buying iPads and Android devices just for this, and real credit and respect to them, because that wasn't easy. So an interesting learning experience, hopefully one that we don't need to use and take too much from again, albeit I do think streaming and digitalization of games in the EFL is here to stay.
Well, that was my next thing, because it was accelerated by COVID. And so does it now give you like another string to the bow to, yes, when all the restrictions are done and all the vaccines are done and people can come back, like you get a capacity stadium. So now you've actually got a product and a service and a capacity to deliver to start, reaching those fans who can't get there, can't travel, want to still be engaged and better connect. So do you think that like you will start shaping your season ticket packages and giving a different offer to your fans?
Yeah, so in the UK or right across Europe, we have UEFA Article 48, which is blocked out hours. So in regular times between the hours of, I think it's just after 1 o'clock, right through till after 5, you cannot stream a live game. And the reason why, the theory of that rule is to protect. Man United are on TV at 3 o'clock, then Lincoln City aren't going to get the coverage that they need, or will lose fans. Now, that I think that's far more anecdotal. I do think we've got to learn what comes out of this. We love full stadiums, and there's nothing we want to do to hurt that. And what we've got to respect is we can't just say, well, Lincoln City fans are allowed to do it. If you do it, then Man United fans are going to be able to do it, as well as Lincoln City fans, as well as, Man City, Arsenal, whatever it may be. So we've got to be very, very careful, because once we open that door, you'll never be able to close it. But I think we've got to understand it far, far more. We've got to understand what that fan journey looks like. Is streaming comparable to being in the stadium? In my view,
it's not in my view either.
Is it a journey? So are you a streamer before you're a fan in the stadium, or are you a streamer that avoids you having to sit in the stadium? I'm not too sure, and I think this is stuff that our industry.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of changing behaviour, like the always on. I want to be able to get anything, and then when you can get all the other sports and other leagues in different parts of the world at a push of a button, and then to take it away. And I think what COVID has done, when we can't be focused on getting people into stadiums, we've talked to all the fans, and there's always more fans than the stadium can fit. And so it's a matter of getting that right. And so, I think, COVID has disrupted technology. It's definitely disrupted the lawyers. So that, things like that article will probably get rewritten because of it, because if it opens up revenue streams for teams and creates viability across both the football pyramid but sports around the world. I think it'll actually be the customers that are demanding it, not should we do it? Are we trying to protect our TV rights? I think the customers will say, I don't know, I really like watching an iFollow or opening up NBA League Pass or NFL or whatever your sport. That's what the consumer wants. So I think it'll be a consumer-led, hopefully, a change that gives you something else to sell and further commercialise your club.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Sean. I think that what we do know. So anecdotally, we have fans. So Plymouth, we have season ticket holders in Plymouth, which in the UK is about as far away as you can possibly get from Lincoln. And they come to about 15 games a year. Their journey's a flight. It's again, I know this might sound quite typical to some fans, in Australia or even the US and the bigger countries, but in the UK that is just not the normal. I think the thing that we've got in the UK that we've got to be very careful about is we have the density of fans. So we really do wring the neck in terms of number of clubs, number of opportunities. We're not a franchise model. And I think it's just making sure that, there is enough within that whole ecosystem and that whole pot to go around. I use Rochdale as an example because they're a fantastic club. But, they've got Manchester United, Manchester City, Oldham, within that Northwest, they have got a lot of competition. And the last thing we want is for young boys and girls growing up to be Man United fans and not Rochdale fans just because it's so accessible. So there's a real balance, but I certainly haven't got the answers. I think we've got to use data. We've got to do analysis. We've got to talk to the fans, and we've just got to understand this whole space because, we've gone from being in the minor leagues to the major leagues in this space in 12 months because of a pandemic. So boy, do we need to grow up. So it's really important we catch up with the times, and I think we will. The EFL are doing a great job. I think the next 12 months are actually going to be more interesting because there's a hell of a lot of learning, and as fans do return to stadiums, we're going to see their behaviours and their traits and that bounce back effect. So who knows, Sean? But I agree with everything that you've just said.
Well, before we wrap up, I do want to touch on, you did mention just last May, you played Blackpool. You didn't get the result you wanted, but it must have been an amazing day, considering the previous, 12 months. Take us through that day, and I guess, it's hard to judge a season just completely on field. But what did that day mean to you and all the fans of the Imps?
Yeah, so there was 10,000 people allowed in Wembley Stadium, 4,000 Lincoln City fans. And for us, we were 90 minutes away from the championship. And I think what was really important is whatever happened in that day, and I know it's easy to say retrospectively, but genuinely, whatever happened that day couldn't define our season, because the season and everything that we've been through has been nothing but a resounding success. On field, off field, everybody pulling together, albeit, with a great deal of jeopardy and with a great deal of opportunity. There was 90 minutes of this, the outcome of this, there's going to be tears of joy or tears of sadness. And I think, going through that experience, I can honestly say, Sean, it's the least enjoyable 90 minutes of my life, from sitting down and watching the game, knowing how much riding on it. We've been there recently with the Checkatrade Trophy final. But it sounds completely glib, but it was different because with the Checkatrade Trophy final, you're either winners or losers of the cup. You get a trophy or you don't. Whereas with the playoffs, it's about your next 12 months. It's about the division you're going to compete in. It's about, it impacts so much. So that was really difficult. But, we had the youngest squad in the EFL. So out of the whole 72 clubs, we had the youngest group of players. We'd been on such a transition. It was a huge success for the football club to reach that period, and a huge growing up experience, a huge opportunity for our young boys and for our young football club. Whilst we're rich in history and deep in history, it's only the last few years that this latest incarnation of the club has been operating at League One. We beat Sunderland on the way to the final, and look, there's never more that you feel little Lincoln City than going to the Stadium of Light and the infrastructure that you have around that. It's a Premier League infrastructure. It's a magnificent. So I think the journey is actually more important than that one day. But in the end, enjoyed the experience, didn't enjoy the outcome. Was a great reward to kind of get people together. Okay, we didn't quite reach the standards that we wanted to, but we reset, we learn, and we're better from those experiences. And as a young boy and growing up, and playing sports and whatever, every now and then you get a punch in the face and you realise that certain things hurt and what not to do again and what to do again, and you learn from that experience, and I think it was no different. So overall very positive. Won't let it define us, but will hopefully it goes in the bank of resilience from that experience, and we're better from it.
I mean, it's very, especially in the world of sport, there are always winners and losers, but at sometimes working in the sports business, you've got to realise how awesome it is to be there, to be in those, to be on those stages and to soak it up. I've worked with a few different teams, and it's you do the long hours, you're responding to tweets or answering emails at the middle of the night, and all these things that we go through with sports. It's tough when you get to these big games of massive stakes to just stop every now and again and look around and go, oh, it's awesome to be here. But if you can take that beat, it's definitely well worth it, because this is why we're in the business we're in.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. And, 3 minutes into the game, my wife, who was sat next to me, turned around and she just said, look, a boy from Sheffield that grew up on a council estate sat in the Royal Box at Wembley. So, you can't be any more prouder than that.
Terrific, Liam. But I want to close things off with a Sports Geek closing 5. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Yeah, that was Sheffield United versus Leicester City in the old Division 1. So I grew up in Sheffield. Sheffield United was my team. And a number of friends on the road were going. And I think about 11 of us got into the back seat of a Ford Sierra. We all went and watched the game together and was hooked ever from that moment.
Terrific. Is there a favourite food or a go-to food when you go to a sports event, or is there something that Lincoln City is known for?
This definitely won't translate across the ocean, Sean. But at a football game, it's got to be a pie and bovril. So gravy drink and a pie. Spill it all over yourself when somebody scores, but 100% pie and bovril all day long.
No, that's fine. In my part of the world, it's a pie and sauce, but I do get the bovril reference, and it has been used before. So you're not the first to say a pie and bovril. That's okay. What's the first app you open in the morning?
Really sad, but it's Outlook.
That's all right. It's the first. It's always the first one. That's all right. Is there someone that you think the podcast listeners should follow? It might be someone that you work with, or a colleague doing a great job, or maybe an author.
Well, you've already spoken about Fiona Green, who her and Winners I think are excellent, but I'm a Matthew Said junkie, so I read and love everything that he does, follow him on Twitter. I like his lens and his take on things are often very pragmatic, very balanced and very rational. So if those of you that don't know of Matthew Said, I'd strongly recommend reading his books and following him on Twitter because, he's an inspirational guy and talks a lot of sense in my world.
All right, we'll check him out, and I'll put some links in the show notes to Matthew. And lastly, you can answer this personally and then also as Lincoln City. What social media platform is your MVP?
I think for me, as a professional, loving and learning Tableau dashboards and headline information, we've built a number of data dashboards at the football club that, I was a pest on a Thursday and a Friday and a Saturday morning leading up to the games, pestering the ticket office team for ticket sales, pestering every department, WhatsApp groups and whatever. Whereas now, thanks to the work of Fiona and Winners and the team, I've got a nice dashboard that at 11 o'clock at night I can log in, I can check, and I don't need to mither anyone. So there's definitely that. And we love Twitter as well from a personal point of view. I just love the opportunity it gives you to engage with people. You get to see real life, and ultimately it's got a disparate views. You've got a lot of views and opinions that I definitely don't agree with, but people own those opinions, and I respect that. And I think it's a great lens to have as a professional. You've got to be very careful not to listen to too much and forget about the silent majority. But I think it's a great tool to use to benchmark and to understand how we are doing.
Terrific. And the platform the platform that's working the best for the team?
I'd go back to probably Tableau again. I think that's our
pulling everything together. That's the takeaway. If you want your CEO to be less annoying, make sure they have a dashboard so they can see everything and they won't annoy you. Is that the takeaway?
Yeah, pretty much. In fairness, I think if you ask the team, that's exactly what they would say.
Not a problem. Liam, where is the best place for people to connect to you, reach out to you and say, hey, I listened to the podcast, really enjoyed it? What's the best platform to do that? Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Liam J. Scully, if anybody wants to get in touch. Equally, we do have a real thorough feedback system at Lincoln City, so feedback@theredimps.com. Mark it for my attention. I guarantee that email will get passed to me, and if there's anything people want to discuss, I'm very much open and willing for a discussion. So thank you for having me, Sean. No, not a problem. I hope that the travel restrictions do get lifted at some point, and I can come have a pie and bovril at an Imps game in the not too distant future. But I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast. No, thank you for having me, and all the best with Gravitas as well.
Learn from the Sports Geek Amplify Season 1 cohort. Timo, Vlast, Stellar Algo, Ubi Park, and Zoof. For more, go to sportsgeekamplify.com. Thanks again to Liam Scully. You can send him a tweet
He's active on the Twitter, Liam J. Scully. And as I said in the opener, please send him a message or post it on LinkedIn and say that you enjoyed the episode on LinkedIn. I'd really do appreciate it. Before we wrap up, I had a few people inquiring about digital dollars, digital $2. How does it work? How can it work for you as a team? It's very flexible. It's very plug and play. You can take all of it. You can take parts of it. Really, the main focus is if you do need a digital review that'll actually help you drive more revenue. If the answer to that is yes, then that's where digital $2 comes in. It works across the 5 pillars, and this is where it is adaptable and flexible. Know your audience. So that's when you're looking at who is our audience, where could growth opportunities exist, where could further commercialize opportunities exist. So it's diving into your data, very much talking similar things to what I did with Liam and previously on the podcast chat last week with Fiona Green. So it's diving into that audience piece. What does social media say? What does your audience say? Connect with? What type of things do they connect with? So it's starting to understand that. And so that's really good for your ticketing, data stuff, trying to understand what's working. Know your content is really pivoting around your digital review. What content's working? Why is it working? What audience is that content working for? So those are really key pieces. It's really good for a digital team, your content creators, your producers of your content to sort of dive in on what content they are producing that's working really well, what content they're producing just because they're producing the content and it's not working well, therefore maybe you shouldn't be doing it. That's what the Know Your Content pillar is all about. So we're about looking at and getting a bit more structure around what your content strategy is and your plans and those kind of things. So it can be done in a looking back mode, reviewing your content, but then also a forward planning mode to say, what are the new content franchises we're going to develop and why are we developing them for? And who are we developing them for? So that's what Know Your Content is. Know Your Distribution is really an overall review of your channel strategy and primarily social media, looking at the different social media channels, why you should use them, how you should use them, what the frequency should be used, what the effort should be put into them, what is the return on that effort. So it's looking at going back to what are your audiences on those platforms, what are the content that you're producing, how would you shape that content for those platforms. So that's what Know Your Distribution is. And so those first 3 pillars really do set the foundation of what your digital strategy is. Who are you doing it for? What are you doing and where are you putting it? And then the last 2 pieces are really commercial focused and are really specific to the world of sports business, where we are looking to create value out of the digital assets and what we're doing from a campaign and a content point of view. So the first one is know your value. How much, what value do you put on all the different assets on where a logo or a sponsor integration might be? And so that is things like, and talking about our partnership with Scratch, the Scratch logo appearing in the LCO broadcasts, the Scratch being mentioned on a coach's interview, Scratch being talked about and promoted in a Gravitas tweet or in an Instagram or an Instagram story. So piecing together all of those pieces, what is the value delivered for those, which helps present the overall value of your overall partnership. So that's the value piece, to be able to at least be able to go back to your partner and say, well, we delivered, or we promised to deliver, either one, looking forward or looking back, these assets, and we believe the value is this. And then the last piece is you've got that now as your framework. We know what we're delivering. Then it's about knowing your pitch. What are you trying to deliver for your partner, and how can you best present the sales opportunity? So again, you've got a valuation of, hey, here's what I'm going to deliver, but really diving in on what you're going to deliver for the client. So again, if I'm using my own case study here, I've just launched. Yes, Mike at Scratch wants more people to know about Scratch, and there's an awareness piece of value, but then here's a subscription business. So one of the KPIs and one of the things that we want to deliver is getting more people to sign up for great dog food that is better for their dogs, and it becomes a monthly subscription. So framing your pitch around the results that your sponsor wants to get a win-win situation. So it's really about crafting your sponsorship that ticks a lot of the boxes that your sponsors want. If I don't fumble on my words. So that's pretty much the process. The early parts are more data heavy and content and develop and your creative team, and the back end process is more sales team. But the idea is to get more visibility across your whole team on someone's producing some great content for a certain audience. How can it be commercialized in the best manner? So it does work for a league. I've done it at a league level, helping them understand the bigger picture of their audience and what content strategy and platforms would work. I've done it for a team as far as helping them understand where digital fits, how it can be better sold, trying to solve those problems around commercial and digital and having them fight. And then it also works for an athlete or a coach or a personality. We're seeing in the NCAA the name and likeness things coming in. Digital to dollars works for an individual athlete. And like I said before, it works for any business. The first three are effectively a digital strategy and content plan. So if you're interested, please reach out to me, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. You can go to digitaltodollars.com to check it out. There's 5 episodes of this podcast that sort of go through those 5 pillars, but thought it was a good time to go back and sort of give you a bit of a rundown of what it is. That's it from me for this episode. As always, I love working with podcast listeners. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. And additionally, it's great to see sports starting to bounce back. Here in Australia, we are going through some lockdowns and some uncertainty, but hopefully everything is bouncing back. But if you feel like you need some advice or a hand, I have got an office hours option available. If you go to sportsgeekhq.com/office hours, I'll see what I can do. I'll see how I can help. You might be a career crossroads, or you might be trying to look for a new gig. That's pretty much what it's for, to sort of help sports get back up on its feet. Don't forget, you can check out the Sports Geek Amplify series at sportsgeekamplify.com. It's also in this podcast feed. That's it from me. Appreciate your support. Please check out Gravitas at gravitas.gg is the website. I really appreciate you supporting my esports team. And until next week, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
We'd love your support on our Patreon campaign. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. Have you listened to the Sports Geek Amplify series? Go to sportsgeekamplify.com to listen.